Okay, so this is a story that honestly feels like it's straight out of a political thriller. But it's not about spies or secret agents. It's about something we all make every single day: garbage. We're going to deconstruct how this massive waste crisis brewing in Ontario slammed headfirst into an international trade war. And what came out of it was this perfect storm of trash, tariffs, and, believe it or not, artificial intelligence. So you look at this, and what do you see? At first glance, it's just a headache, right? A huge pile of industrial waste. We're talking demolition wood here, and for any construction company, this is a multi-million-dollar liability. It's messy, it's super expensive to get rid of, and it's a total logistical nightmare. I mean, you've even got potential hazards in there like arsenic. But what if I told you that exact same pile of junk could be something completely different? What if you could transform it from a liability, something you literally pay to bury in the ground, into a clean, verifiable, and get this, even a tradable financial asset? Yeah, that transformation, that's really the heart of this whole story. So how does this magic happen? Well, it's all powered by something called a digital refinery. It's pretty straightforward, really. First, an AI right there on the construction site scans the wood, scores its quality, and grabs its GPS data so you know exactly where it is. Then the system does the math. It calculates how much money you're saving by not sending it to the landfill, and it even generates tradable carbon credits. You'll see those called CORCs. And finally, the whole thing gets locked into a super secure, totally audit-ready digital manifest. In a nutshell, it turns a regular site supervisor into a high-tech financial auditor. Okay, but why? I mean, why go through all this trouble for a pile of old wood? Well, to really get why this solution is so important, you have to understand the massive, massive problem that made it necessary in the first place. And for that, our story has to start in Ontario, Canada. You see, for years now, the province has been speeding towards what experts call a waste cliff. It's simple, really. Ontario just creates way more trash than it has room for. This has created a genuine existential infrastructure crisis that's been quietly building up for decades. And look, this isn't some far-off, abstract problem. No. Experts have put a hard date on it. They say if the U.S. border ever closed to waste shipments, Ontario would literally completely run out of landfill space by 2029. That is a ticking clock. So you've got this ticking clock, and this total dependency on the U.S. for landfill space? Well, it turned what was a local problem into a full-blown international dispute. The border between Ontario and Michigan, it became the literal front line in what you could only call a garbage war. And to keep from falling off that waste cliff we talked about, Ontario basically started exporting its problem. Get this. In fiscal year 2024 alone, a mind-boggling 3.46 million tons of Canadian solid waste were trucked across the border and just buried in Michigan landfills. I mean, the scale of this is just immense. To put it in perspective, that Canadian trash, it accounts for over 14% of all the waste that gets disposed of in the entire state of Michigan. So yeah, this wasn't some minor trade deal. It basically turned Michigan into a dumping ground, and you can bet that created a massive political firestorm in the state. Now, this whole crisis didn't just happen by accident. It was actively shaped by three really powerful political figures. You had Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, who tried to use economics to fix it. Then, at the federal level in the U.S., you had President Donald Trump, who reached for the, let's say, blunt instrument of trade tariffs. And back in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford fought back, turning waste management itself into a tool of provincial power. So Governor Whitmer's plan was actually pretty clever. She wanted to take away the financial incentive. At the time, Michigan's landfill tipping fee was just 36 cents a ton, crazy cheap. She proposed jacking that up to $5. But there was a catch, a big one. Because of the U.S. Constitution, that new fee had to apply to everyone, not just the Canadian trucks. Her opponents immediately branded it a trash tax on Michigan's own residents, and, well, the plan stalled out. Meanwhile, at the federal level, things were escalating dramatically. In early 2025, the Trump administration just slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, and yeah, that included waste. This was a logistical nightmare for the trucking companies. But then, fast forward to February 2026, and the Supreme Court actually strikes those tariffs down. Victory, right? Not so fast. Just 4 days later, the administration pivots, uses a totally different law, and imposes a new 10% global surcharge. The pressure cooker was right back on high. So you've got this perfect storm, right? A hostile border, tariffs going up and down, new taxes brewing back in Ontario. The old way of doing business, the simple dump and tip model,
was completely broken. And it was exactly this chaos that created the perfect opening for that radical new solution we talked about at the start.
But that raises a huge question. With all this pressure, how on earth do you build a system that can navigate this maze of regulations with perfect accuracy? I mean, how do you actually trust an AI to interpret complex environmental law when one wrong move could cost you millions of dollars in fines? Well, the answer lies in a really specific AI technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short. The best way to think about it is this. It's like giving the AI an open book exam. Instead of just trying to guess the right answer from its vast memory, it is forced to go look up the specific fact from a specific textbook. And in this case, that textbook is the actual literal legal text of Ontario's Regulation 347, the law that governs all of this. And what you get is perfect. The system doesn't just flash a red light that says load rejected. No, it gives you the reason, and it quotes the law directly, saying something like, this load is flagged because it might exceed the legal limit for arsenic, as defined right here in Schedule 4 of the regulation. This is huge. It's not just compliance, it's explainable compliance. So what's under the hood? It's all powered by a pretty sophisticated tech stack built on Google Cloud. You can think of it like this. Google Gemini acts as the eyes of the system, doing the visual scanning on site. Vertex AI is the project manager, handling the entire workflow. And then you have AlloyDB AI, which is the brain and the memory. It uses this incredible search to instantly compare a new wood sample against a massive library of known contaminants. And it does it in milliseconds. Okay, so now we can finally connect all the dots. We've got the geopolitical crisis, the intense economic pressure, and this amazing technological solution. So let's talk about the payoff. Let's see exactly how this system solves the huge problems we've been talking about. The money part of it is actually incredibly simple. Ontario is bringing in this new tax, the CIRCL levy. It adds a whopping $60 for every single ton of mixed waste you send to a landfill. But if you use the digital refinery, you create this ironclad audit-proof record that the wood was actually recycled. And because of that, your levy drops to zero. It's done through something called decoupled billing, which basically uses that proof of diversion to completely separate your transaction from the landfill. You see how it tackles every single pressure point? Problem? Chaos and tariffs at the border. Solution, it automatically generates the official USMCA Certificate of Origin PDF you need to prove your stuff is tariff exempt. Problem, that new $60 a ton Ontario levy. Solution, verifiable proof of diversion that eliminates the tax. Problem, the constant threat of a surprise environmental audit. Solution, an unchangeable digital manifest ready whenever they ask for it.
What this all means, when you step back, is that the entire game has changed. For decades, environmental compliance was just a cost center. It was a line item on a budget, inexpensive, defensive part of the business. This technology completely flips that script. It turns the very act of following the rules into a verifiable, production-ready revenue stream. And that gives you a massive competitive edge.
And that really leaves us with one last big thought. We've just walked through how AI can look at a pile of actual garbage, a literal, costly liability, and refine it into a valuable asset. Think about it. This isn't just about old wood. This is a blueprint. It's a way to turn almost any regulated industrial byproduct, whether it's mining tailings or chemical sludge, into a data-driven asset. So it really makes you wonder, what other huge industrial liabilities are out there just waiting to be digitally refined?